Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
There are days when I wish that I were Mary Poppins. Meaning, she had this magic carpet bag, and whatever she needed, she could pull out of it to meet the needs of any person at any given time. She was amazing that way. And so are our volunteers at Beth Torah. For those of you that don't know, this is our Volunteer Appreciation Shabbat. And the messages about loving volunteers and what they do for us are actually embedded in the Parsha, in the story of Miriam. So there are three things that I want to say about Miriam, three messages for this Devar Torah. One is that what she did, the services she provided for the community, were precious and treasured. Another is that when she left, she was missed. And a third was that the community had to plan for that transition. They had to move on to be able to deal with things themselves. Miriam has only a handful of sentences about her in the Torah, and especially in comparison to her brothers, it seems pretty meager. But the Midrash on Miriam is rich. And so we are told that Miriam was the source of water for the people in the wilderness. And the rabbis get this from two different places. One is from our Parsha. It says that Miriam dies, and the very next sentence says, and there was no water. So the rabbis say that Miriam had a magical well, and that wherever the Israelites encamped, kind of like Mary Poppins' carpet bag, she could pull out this well and give them water. The other reason that they say Miriam must have been the possessor of water is they talk about in Ta'anit, in the Talmud, the three things one would need in the wilderness to survive. Well, you would need food, manna. They associate that with Moses, who definitely nourished the people in more ways than one. You would need shelter, the clouds of glory, which they associate with Aaron, because the clouds of glory often hovered over the tabernacle. And the third thing, of course, you would need in the wilderness is water. And they said, well, there's one more sibling left in the triumvirate, so they assigned water to Miriam. But I don't think it was just physical water that she provided. She is attached to water throughout the Torah, starting at the scene at the Nile, when she's following her brother to make sure that he's safe. It's not just about his physical safety, but it's his emotional safety that she's looking out for, and that of her mother's. Did this baby come into a home that was going to be welcoming? Or at the Song of the Sea, her song of encouragement is a celebration. It's allowing the people to feel the emotion of their freedom finally. I think the same is true of the water she drew for them in the desert. It wasn't just nourishment, it was nurturing. And that's true of our volunteers at Beth Torah. They take care of practical things. They make sure that money is raised to keep the roof overhead and make sure that the roofing company is called and all of those good things. But they also create a feeling at Beth Torah of security and goodwill, being nourished here. You don't worry about the roof falling down on your head because you know some volunteer has raised the money and called the roofing company to patch the roof after the storms in May, right? They take care of us spiritually and emotionally as well. So that's point one. Just like Miriam was appreciated by the people, our volunteers are appreciated by us. But point two is that when they leave, we miss them. We miss not only what they can do for us, but who they are. So Miriam, this provider of water, dies in our Parsha. And the very next thing the people do is they say, we're thirsty. And in fact, the commentary tells us that people say, thirst is worse than plague. If only we had died last Parsha in Korach's rebellion from a plague. Thirst is symbolic of a longing, right? You can't quench a thirst easily because there's no more Miriam. What they're saying is we miss her. It's a wound that's gaping. We're thirsty for her. And then we see the scene with Moses and the rock. And now it's his job to provide the water. This isn't his department, right? He handles manna, so he's trying to figure out how to help the people with what they're needing. And he uses a word, morim, which means you rebels. But the way it's written in the Torah, it's chaser, the vav is missing. So unless you used your logic to know that he's saying rebels, what you could also read there instead of morim is Miriam. He calls out to his sister in that moment. And then in frustration and pain, he hits the rock. And it tells us he hits it twice. And the commentaries say the first time when he hits it, only a little trickle comes out, right? He doesn't know how to provide water. It takes him twice as much effort as he took his sister. He is feeling her absence. And the same is true of our volunteers when they go, especially if we haven't found someone to replace them in a particular role. We really notice that they're not taking care of the things that they used to take care of for us. So point one is that what Miriam did and what our volunteers do is precious. Point two is that when those services stop being provided, we notice, we miss them, we're thirsting for it. The last point I want to make is that there has to be transition. You can't volunteer forever, right? You'll burn out. So there's one more story of water in the Parsha that comes towards the end. And if you'd like to look at it with me, it's on page 890. So they're going this long way around because they have asked for passage through certain lands and have been denied that passage. And we're told in line 16, and from there to Be'er, which literally means a well. And from there to Be'er, which is the well, where the Lord said to Moses, assemble the people that I may give them water. So they've discovered a new well. Then Israel sang this song. So to get the water, Israelites can no longer be passive. They have to do the singing themselves to draw the water up from the ground. And this is what they sing. Spring up, O well, sing to it, the well which the chieftains dug. This is no magical well. This is a well that was dug by the hard labor of their leaders, which the nobles of the people started with maces and with their own staffs. So by the end of the Parsha, or toward the end of the Parsha, the people have had to learn to provide their own water. And the same is true for us when we need to say goodbye to our volunteers after they have done such a good job serving us. We have to ask ourselves, can I be someone else's Mary Poppins? Can I have that magic carpet bag that seems to have everything in it that anyone could ever possibly need? And so, if you're curious, we do have some volunteer positions open. We are putting together a committee for a retreat in November. We could use not only a chair, but more volunteers to help plan the committee. We're planning a trip to Israel. Again, we could use folks. Volunteers are going to be used in our learning center starting this fall to provide every child with 20 minutes of private tutoring, so we make sure we're addressing their individual needs. We're missing a VP of education. So if you know someone or you would like to, please come and talk to Alan about your desire to provide water for your people. But most importantly, if you see a volunteer today, hug them and say thank you. Shabbat Shalom.